Hey everybody, we are joined by Joe Hueber, the Packers college scout for the Midwest region. And Joe, could you give us kind of a job description? What does that entail?
Well, I cover the Midwest, kind of east of the Mississippi, so that would entail Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky. Spend most of my year kind of driving around those areas, hitting all the schools. Hit them a couple times, hitting games, practices, getting background, watching film, and hoping we find some good players.
Speaking of which, in a typical cycle, Joe, how many guys will you evaluate?
It depends on the year, but you're usually looking at somewhere between 250, 300, I would say.
When you look at a player at the get-go, what catches your eye?
Some of these guys we kind of start tracking during the summer, so I got an idea of where they are on film. When you go out and watch them at practice during training camp, you kind of get a feel for how they move and all that stuff, and some guys just immediately pop at you, just the way they look. You can feel their speed, feel their power, and that's kind of where you start with it.
What is the most valuable part of the evaluation process? What do you lean the heaviest on?
Always go back to the film. Goody's kind of taught us that you know, at the end of the day, it's always going to be on tape for the good ones, and that's kind of what we always lean on.
Do you find being at the actual game, is that beneficial? Do you get a lot more out of that than, say, practice?
I think for certain positions you do. Like, say, for a quarterback, you can really tell how he commands his huddle, commands his sideline on game days. You know, for offensive linemen, you know how those guys are. They kind of the same day to day usually. But for certain positions where you're looking for some of the intangible stuff, I feel like game day atmosphere can really teach you a lot.
When you're out on the road doing your thing, what is your typical day like?
Get up early, try and find a cup of coffee, get in there early. A lot of times you'll meet with the pro liaison at the school right away. Go through background. If it's your second or third time through the school, get some updates on injuries or if anything's happened. Kind of check in on the season, see if anybody's popped up that you might have missed the first time. Then go in, watch tape for as long as you need to. Hang around. You talk to strength coach, academics, position coaches, however long you need to be there. Hit practice and then hit the road and drive again.
Joe, how important is self-discipline in what you do? Because nobody's looking over your shoulder saying, maybe we ought to do this, maybe we ought to do that, or it's quitting time. You've got to decide all those things yourself. How important is self-discipline?
It's very important because in the job that I have, we're entrusted to set our own schedules. So we have to make sure that we're doing the right thing and that we're everywhere we need to be on time, every time.
Joe, I think this is really interesting. You did not play college football, but while you were an undergrad at Iowa, you're working in recruiting and evaluation. Same at Minnesota. Then after that, you go to Pitt, working in recruiting and evaluation. Might that be a better way to do it than playing college football and learning one position and one thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten a lot more popular to take that route. Pretty much, I think I was kind of one of the first ones to, maybe not one of the first ones, but kind of, it's been a popular way to get into the business now. But I also was born into a football family. My old man was a coach for 40 years.
At Wisconsin for a long time.
For a very long time, and at Minnesota and a myriad of other places. So it's always been a part of my life. And, you know, I could have went and played D3 ball. Wasn't good enough to do, you know, be a big-time player, but wanted to stay around big-time football, and that's kind of why I chose the path I did.
That football atmosphere growing up, how did that affect you? Obviously, it affected you a lot.
Yeah, it was my life, and still is. Like, I can't leave it.
I thought this was pretty cool. The other day, I was looking at some stuff on YouTube, And I find Joe up there talking about a guy the Packers just selected in the first round, Rashawn Gary. And your comments were kind of met with skepticism. Rashawn had some doubters out there. And you know what's interesting, Joe, is everything you said about Rashawn up at the podium that day turned out to be true.
That's a credit to Rashawn. We knew what kind of kid we were getting, but he's more than exceeded our expectations.
I also saw where you were the guy that originally got a fellow by the name of Jair Alexander on the Packers watch list, even though Ja is kind of borderline when it comes to the height part of it. You got him on the watch list. You went to bat for this guy. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, like Sam Seal says, players are players. If they can play, they can play. So every once in a while, you got to take an exception, and I think he was a pretty good one.
Joe, how difficult is your job? Because really, in essence, you're betting on people. Personally, I'd rather bet on horses. They don't have fights with their girlfriend. They don't have problems. They don't think too much. How difficult is this job of evaluation?
I don't like to think of it as difficult. I'd like to think of it as challenging. Like it's a challenge for myself. It's a challenge for all of our scouts. Difficult is one way to put it. I just see it as a personal and professional challenge to go do what we do.
Are you more of a feel guy or a numbers guy? Are analytics big with you?
I think the way we've incorporated it, I really like what we do with Jack and those guys, how they help us out. But I mean, for what I do, I got to go back to the tape. I got to go back to the practices, the games. Like that's my part of it. So I would tell you I'm a feel guy, I guess.
9th year in the business, so you've got some experience. What was it like, or how difficult was it to find your voice originally as a newcomer?
Yeah,
I'd be intimidated to death.
The first couple of years, you're pretty quiet in the draft room, you know what I mean? But you know, when they assign you an area, you don't have a choice. You got to start speaking up because you're the one who went and saw those players, and the last thing that GM wants to hear when a player comes up is silence. So you find out. You're going to find your voice.
Joe, who's been the biggest influence, would you say, on your career?
I would tell you my father. You know, like I said, I was born into this business, and he still to this day gives me advice weekly. He's a guy who, after we might have lost the game, he can pick me up pretty good. And then all the guys in those rooms. You know, I was an intern here before I got hired full time. They took a chance on me, and that's invaluable. And the stuff that they have taught me and continue to teach me is, I think, great for my career.
9th season in the league, 7th as a scout. What's the biggest thing you've learned along your career?
I actually don't know. There's been so much stuff, you know, kind of think about how different I view the whole process of what we do. You know, you come in as an intern and I'm like, okay, I'm just watching these guys and handing in, and Elliot and Goody would mark them up and bring them back to me. And going through the entire process is so much different than when I began.
In a big picture sense, do you have an overall philosophy of what's important when it comes to roster building?
I'd say, you know, everybody wants big, fast guys, right? That's so.
Well, that would be a good place to
to
start. That would be a good place to start.
There's only so many of them, though. So really, you know, smart, tough, dependable, you know, and then let's add on big and fast at the end of that too.
When you are able and in town, not on the road, I see you practice a lot. When you're watching the Green Bay Packers, what exactly do you watch?
I think it's valuable to get, you know, not that I'm an outsider, but for half the year I kind of am, to get an outsider's perspective when I am in town, you know, talk about what I see that may be different, because you can get tunnel vision, you know, and it happens to me too. Just, hey, maybe I saw something they didn't for the day.
What do you think of this Packer team, this edition of the Green Bay Packers?
It's exciting. It's much different than what we've known for a long time, but we're young, we're fast. I think we got a core group of guys who are starting to really bond together. I think it's really exciting.
Now, you grew up in Madison, okay, so the Green Bay Packers are kind of your home state team. Does that add a little icing to the cake? Is that pretty cool, or have you been in the business long enough you don't think about that kind of stuff?
It's very cool. You know, I moved back to Madison a couple years ago, and I still got a lot of friends down there, and they love when Joe brings the box of gear back, and they can get some free stuff.
Joe, what do you like about the job? I mean, lots of hours, lots of travel. What keeps you coming back for more?
The winning, you know, winning and contributing to winning. Finding good players that help the Packers, and all the scouts, we're in this for one real reason, and that's to win. And we all want to win a Super Bowl.
Joe, thanks for the time.
Yeah, appreciate it,
and
Larry.
keep those players coming.
Yeah, thanks.